Okay, good morning. My name is Ria. I'm a compulsive overeater and bulimic. Welcome. I know we have significantly less people today because there is a memorial service for a beloved fellow named Phil this morning. Let's just remember her and recommit to our recovery in her honor because she really was a dedicated and loving member of this fellowship. Okay, so today we're going to talk about step 10. But before we get to step 10, we got to review all the other steps before, right? Because none of the steps happen in a vacuum. So step 1, we admitted our powerlessness over food, that our lives have become unmanageable, right? Until we make that admission, we cannot, there's no reason for us to continue with the rest of the steps. We have to admit our own powerlessness because the problem essentially, as it says in the big book, is our lack of power. It's not the fact that we're eating compulsively. It's the fact that we can't stop ourselves from doing that. It's the fact that we have a brain, we have this allergy, and even if we know intellectually that we have an allergy, our brain keeps telling us that we don't have an allergy, and we cannot stop ourselves from that cycle. Lack of power, that was our dilemma, right? So until we are really sure and concede to ourselves that we are powerless, there's nothing to talk about. So step 1 is we admitted our powerlessness, right? Step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So once we've taken step 1, step 2 is actually fairly straightforward because if I have no power, then something that's not me has to have a power to take care of it, which is really what a higher power is. That's why I use the word God because it works for me. It's something I'm comfortable with. And I do have a connection to and a belief in an entity, a creative entity that is greater than me. Not everybody believes in that, and that's fine. A power greater than myself just has to be a power greater than myself. Some people say it's the group. Some people say that it's, some sort of psychological, sociological phenomenon. I don't care what it is. I just care that you have a higher power and that it's not you. The end. Okay. Step 3, turned our will and our lives over to the care of that higher power. That means not just our food, but every aspect of our lives, because as we saw in step 3, the way we've been living our lives with ourselves as our higher power just gets us into trouble and brings us back to the food over and over. So we have to be willing not only to say, okay, this higher power, I'm using the word God. God, I know that you're handling my powerlessness, not over this cycle of addiction that I have, but over the way that I'm living my life. You need to be in control of everything, because I just make a mess of things. And in order to do that, I'm going to keep repeating those same cycles unless I clear out the inventory, which is what step 4 is about. Because when I see the patterns that I've engaged in over and over and over again, eventually it becomes so uncomfortable that I'm willing to let them go, or at least become aware enough of them that I recognize them when they start coming up again and saying, wait a minute, I know what that's about. So I need to not go down that road again. We make it official in our step 5 and neutralize them when we tell them to another person, these deep, dark monster secrets that we have. And the other person more times than not will say, yeah, me too. I've done that. And it's not such a big deal anymore. Step 6 and 7 come up right after step 5, where we ask God to remove all the defects of character. We're ready to have these defects of character removed, and we ask God to remove them. Obviously, so as we say in, as it says in the big book, that these defects were cast out, which is really the language of exorcism, which I said in the step when I spoke about that steps last time. So in other words, God's going to lift these defects out of us. That may happen instantaneously. It may happen 10 years from now. The point is that I'm willing to undergo this transformation, however long it takes. That's 6 and 7, right? So now, with the information that we have gotten from steps 4, 5, 6, and 7, we now embark on steps 8 and 9, where we make the list of people we need to make amends to. And if we're not clear who we need to make amends to, we just need to consult our step 4, because by then it's pretty clear. But of course, we also speak with our sponsors, and if we're not sure, but ultimately, in every situation, there is an amends we need to make. Even if we haven't done anything wrong, sometimes the act of forgiving someone else and letting them go is an amends. It's an amends to them, and it's amends to ourselves. We can talk about that more another time, which we already did last month, but we can talk about it again if you have questions afterward. So now that we've done all this work, We've cleared out the pipeline. We've aligned ourselves. We're ready to, we've turned ourselves into God's instruments instead of running a life on self-will. Well, that's not something we do once. Just like I eat a meal, I'm going to get hungry later. Just because I took a shower yesterday doesn't mean I'm clean today, which means that I have to keep perpetuating this positive cycle, which is what step 10 is about. Okay, so we're going to read out of the big book on page 84, the second paragraph. Step 10 is actually very short. It's like one page. So I'm going to read it and then we'll go through it together. Okay. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And I'm going to stop there because there's already a lot in that paragraph, okay? So first of all, please note that the word continue shows up 4 times, 5 times, 4 times, okay? So continue, the word continue means that this is an ongoing process. This is not, we're not fixed. And we're certainly not cured from our addiction. And we're certainly not fixed as people. This is an ongoing process that we're going to have to continue doing forever, for the rest of our lives, because we're still human and there's always stuff that's going to come up, okay? So step 10, by the way, just for those who are unclear of what it is, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Now, why do we have to do that? Well, because if we block the channel, those little things that we hold on to, the anger, the resentment, the jealousy, the fear, all of those things, those are the things that we ate over because it triggered our restlessness, irritability, and discontent. We have to keep turning it over, or eventually the buildup is so much that we can't access our higher power and our brain starts talking to us again and we go back to the food. Living is the problem, right? That's what we know about from step 1. We were powerless over food, that our lives had become unmanageable. We have a life problem, not a food problem. Food was the solution to our problem. So now that we've come up with a new solution, we have to keep living that solution in order to not go back and try to fix the problem the way that we used to, okay? So we're continuing to take personal inventory and continuing to set right any new mistakes as we go along. Because we're going to make mistakes and new things are going to keep coming up. You know, I had something come up for me the other day. This is like so obvious, but it didn't even occur to me, okay? I was in a class and I was talking about like this pressure I put on myself as a mom. Like if I go do things creatively off on my own, then I'm neglecting my children. But if I stay with my children and don't pursue myself creatively, then I'm like a loser schmata kind of person, right? So the person I was talking to said, or the teacher of this class said, well, tell me about what would trigger you. Like, where does that feeling come from? So I was telling him about my mother and how my mom went back to work when I was 8 years old. And not just like she went to work, like she traveled all over the country, like she was constantly traveling. And when I was 12, she ended up quitting and coming back home to be with us. And there's a story about my brother staying up all night to see her before she left for a business trip, whatever. I don't remember, I don't have an actual memory of that time, I would say, but I somehow internalized that we as children were neglected somehow when my mom was gone. And in my head, I realized that that's what I had taken on, which now feeds my victimhood and resentment about not being able to be creative. But deeper than that, I realized that my eating took off precisely when I was 8 years old, precisely when my mom went back to work. I don't blame her, it's not her fault. But the point is, clearly there was something I was missing by her being gone that I was trying to comfort with food. So that's actually a really big discovery. I've been in recovery for over 20 years. I'm 42 years old, and this just occurred to me. So, you know, it's when I'm saying it to you now, it's like, duh, but I could not, I guess I had to like dig down to get it, and I just wasn't ready, or just wasn't there for me to see it. So there will always be more. There just always will. Now, I'm sure that, there's a part of you that's like, oh shit, there's always going to be more, but on the good side, that means you're going to find diamonds, like this is good. This is a good thing. And we're going to continue to set right new mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. We're human. This is what we do. So we're just going to set them right as we go. So we vigorously, that means with a lot of energy, commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So they're saying that we're going to start doing this while we're making our amends. So in the process of doing step 9, we're already going to be starting this spot inventory amends process. Because making amends, like, yes, we're dealing with what happened in the past, but we're already moving into the next stage of the future and filling that vacuum of behavior with a new way of living. Okay. So we have entered the world of the spirit. Now, when you enter a building, you've just walked in. You haven't, found your space yet. You haven't gotten the lay of the land yet. You've just entered, you've just walked in. So that's where we are when we get to step 10. We're making our amends, but we've really just entered the world of the spirit. And we'll see how that applies as we continue this step. Okay, so our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And this is the goal, by the way, for the rest of our lives, growing in understanding and effectiveness. Understanding, that means understanding ourselves and how we function, getting to know our defects and our assets, and being understanding of other people, because the more compassionate and more balanced view we get of ourselves, the more we can be with other people. Because I don't know about you, but I am like the judgiest, most condemning person. But the more I'm able to see my own flaws and my own human motivations, and it says in the 12 and 12, the AA 12 and 12, it talks about how we're more understanding of people as they go through the pain of growing up, which we're all doing. We're all still doing that. So that's the understanding we're trying to build. And effectiveness. Effectiveness means that we're trying to be instruments in this world, doing good, bringing healing, whatever it is that we're supposed to be doing on this planet, we need to be effective. And if I'm too wrapped up in what I think I should get or have or be or whatever, I'm not being effective. So that's the goal here. And that's what the steps really do for us, because I'm sort of like this, trying to function here. And instead I get turned inside out. And now all this energy that I was pouring back into myself, I'm pouring out to put into the world. Okay. So this is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime, right? This is something this is a habit and a skill we're going to develop and sharpen over time. All right. So we're going to continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So based on our last workshops, we know how dangerous and damaging these things can be to an addict. Normal people can just get pissed off and be pissed off, and it's not a problem for them, but it doesn't work that way for addicts. So they give very specific instructions here about what happens when selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear come up. Okay. So when these crop up, and that, mind you, they don't say if they do, they say when, because they will, because we're human and that's how we operate. Okay. So when these crop up, 1, we ask God at once to remove them, right? That's our first step. I'm going to move over here so there's not as much interruption in the background. I have a full house today. Okay. So number 1, we ask God at once to remove them. 2, we discuss them with someone immediately. 3, we make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. And then 4, we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. So this is a foolproof system to deal with any of these things. If I'm feeling wrapped up in myself, if I'm feeling fearful, if someone pisses me off, which is like me on the regular, if I see that I'm being dishonest about something, they're saying, here's what you do when these things come up, because they will. So these are the actions you can take. There are 4 steps. I'll say them again. Ask God at once to remove them, because we are powerless over them. These things sprung up from my own mind, so I cannot fix them with my own mind. I cannot will them away, just like I cannot will the desire for food away, okay? We discuss them with someone immediately, just like in our 5th step. We have to call someone and say, listen, I'm feeling resentment, I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling, and turn it over to them, okay? We make amends if we've harmed anyone. Sometimes we can in person, sometimes we can't. Sometimes it's just, I'm going to desist from that behavior. Sometimes it's calling someone and saying, listen, I was a little critical. Sorry, I wasn't listening. I got a little caught up in my own sense of being right. So I'd like to revisit that conversation when you're ready. You know, it can be that simple. And then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help, because all of these things, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, are self-centered emotions, which we know from the fourth step, selfishness and self-centeredness is what kills us. So if we want to get past those emotions, we need to start not thinking of ourselves, remembering that we're not the center of the universe, go back into God's universe and say, okay, who can I help? Because if I'm thinking about you, if I'm being of service, I'm not caught up in my own crap anymore. Okay, so that's just a quick on one foot. Okay, when these things come up, this is what you do. Okay, so now the next paragraph is basically what is known as the 10-step promises. Okay, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. So there's a difference, by the way, between stop and cease. So stop, like there's a great children's book I read as a kid, and I read to my kids also, called Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. I don't know if anybody has ever read it, but basically there's this donkey and he has a pebble, finds this like red pebble. And if he holds it in his hoof and he makes a wish, any wish he wants comes true. So in the book, it was raining and he says, I wish for it to stop raining. And what the author says is the rain didn't just stop, meaning like, okay, a few more drops come down and then the rain stops. The rain ceased. That means that drops that were not even to the ground just stopped. Like it just stopped right there. So that's what that means. It doesn't mean slowly it's going to trickle down. It means we have, like, at a certain point, that desire for alcohol and that desire to fight people to get what we want will just stop. It will just go away. Which again is that sort of like magic. There's a magical quality to that that's beyond human power. Because if it were up to me, first of all, I have no desire to stop doing these things. But second of all, the fact that it could just stop instantaneously is crazy. It's more than human. So by this time, sanity will have returned. And we talked about how in the second step, God will restore us to sanity. Well, this is what sanity looks like. Sanity doesn't just mean that we're not using food. It means that we're conducting ourselves in a selfless, conscious, God-centered way. And we're striving to, not perfectly, but we're striving to do that more and more every day. That's what sanity looks like, okay? We will seldom be interested in liquor, like not even interested in it. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. And I can share like my experience with that. I don't really think about like food I can't eat so much anymore. But on the rare occasion, like if I make something for my kids or whatever, on the rare occasion that I'm like, ooh, I wonder what that's like, I literally shudder because the idea of what that is for me is, it's the 10-step promises for me. We react sanely, right? That's sanity, and normally. So that's not to be mistaken, by the way. That reaction is about our attitude towards these things, not our physical reaction. So the reaction, as we know, will never change. Once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. So you could have all the spiritual experience and then go and eat whatever a trigger food for you is, and you will react to it the same way that you did even before you did any of the steps. That never goes away because that's how our bodies are made. However, your attitude toward these things will be sane and normal. We won't be thinking about them obsessively. We won't be lusting after them. It's not even part of the equation because remember we said food was the solution to the problem, but now the problem's removed, so there's no need for the food. Okay, so it's not if we ingest these things, but the obsession with it is gone. And we will find that this has happened automatically. Now, there is something physiological about this, by the way. If you have something that you're addicted to and you remove that substance from your system, eventually the cravings go away. The problem with alcoholics and addicts is that eventually, unless we have a spiritual experience, which we talked about a long time ago, unless you have a spiritual experience, our brain is eventually going to tell us that we can go back and have these things. But the idea here is that we've already cemented for ourselves what the situation is. And because we're living in a different way, the idea of even going back there, it feels totally, what's the word? Incongruous with what we're doing. Feels not necessary. So it takes care of itself. We will see how our new attitude toward liquor, right? They're not saying our reaction to it, our attitude toward it has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes, right? Because if I could will myself to be completely neutral around food, let's say for argument's sake that I wanted to be neutral around food, okay? If I could have done that by myself, I would have done it long before I ever came to this program. Right? Like, I'm suffering the consequences of eating compulsively. I'm obese. I'm throwing up. I'm, throwing thousands and thousands of dollars at trying to lose weight. Like, why would I want to keep doing this? So yeah, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I would have done that if I could. But the fact is, what they're saying is the thing that you wanted to happen on your own that you couldn't pull off, it just happens for you. That's insane. It makes no logical sense, but this is what they're saying. This is the 10-step promises. If you do all the things that we said before, and you continue to clean up your side of the street on a regular basis and deepen your relationship to God, it's just going to take care of itself. Okay? That is the miracle of it. And it really is a miracle. It defies logic. It defies the laws of like the physical laws, because for years we lived and this is how it was. And this is the way things were. And now it's just not like that because we did a few things. It makes no sense. That's when they're talking about the spiritual experience, the spiritual solution, because it's existing, it's happening from a sphere that has nothing to do with us. Okay? We are not fighting it. They're talking about food. Neither are we avoiding temptation, meaning it's not even in our consciousness. We think about it, we're aware of it, but it's not the fight that we're having, like the angel and the devil on the shoulder talking to us, telling us whether we should eat it or not. They go away. It's not even a conversation anymore. Okay? We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. When you're neutral, you're not invested one way or the other. It's like you don't even care. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. That's basically saying, so yeah, you had this really horrible addiction and you were stuck in it, but now it's just not a problem anymore. Like, that's crazy. That's a crazy thing to say to somebody. But it's true. That's what it is. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react. Now here's the catch. So long as we keep in fit spiritual condition, right? So you can have all this. Does not have to be your problem anymore. Food does not even have to be on your radar. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about your weight. You don't have to worry about what your nutrition. You have to worry about any of that as long as you keep in fit spiritual condition. Now, I'm going to add a little proviso here because this is really for alcoholics who never have to drink again. Okay? Alcoholics never have to drink ever again. We compulsive overeaters have to eat 3 times a day for the rest of our lives, right? So it's not just about, for us, their abstinence is part of that equation because we have to still put food in our bodies. We still have to take care of ourselves. So number one, we have to keep in fit spiritual condition, and we also have to eat abstinently. That's how it goes, because the benefits that they're talking about here will not continue if we're still introducing substances or behaviors into our bodies and lives that trigger the compulsion or even, giving us any kind of effect. So we have to be very vigilant about that. Okay. So long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Okay. So now that they've given you this little proviso, now they're going to give us like the real warning. Okay. Because let's say like someone like me, okay, I was abstinent for 15 years. I had squeaky clean abstinence. I was in a normal sized body. I was a highly functional person, working full time, 3 kids, taking everybody to school, taking care of this, taking care of that. And I was working full time, couldn't get to a lot of meetings. And suddenly the thought crept in like, okay, well, I've been doing this a while. Like I got this, we're good. stopped really going to meetings so much. I called my sponsor every day, but like thoughts started creeping in. Like, I should be able to, it's been 15 years. I should be able to eat so-and-so. Like, it's not such a big deal. Like, and so guess what? Eventually I relapsed because I wasn't keeping in fit spiritual condition. And they're going to say it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. I rested on my laurels. I thought 15 years of abstinence was insurance against a possible relapse, but that's not true because I still have to do this work every single day. So I gave up. I thought I could just do it. I got this. I've been doing this for so long. I understand. So when they say it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action, so the word easy, let's talk about that for a minute. When it's easy to do something, they say that the difference between a good habit and a bad habit is that a good habit is really easy to break. A bad habit is really hard to break. So if I have these habits that are building up my life, if I have, my food plan and my abstinence, and I'm getting up in the morning and meditating and praying, and I'm, at night doing spot checks during the day, and at night I'm doing my 11-step inventory. That's a lot of work. It's a lot to do in order to support my spiritual recovery and my abstinence. So yeah, it's easy to say one night, oh, I had a really long day. I'm just going to bed. I'll do my 11-step tomorrow. And then in the morning you forget. And over time, these things sort of fall by the wayside. I don't need to go to so many meetings. I know what they're all going to say. I don't need to do my reading this morning. I've got stuff to do. And it's easy to forget about them. But a habit like compulsive eating, you need a freaking miracle. You need a spiritual crowbar to get away from you. So pay attention to when these habits seem to feel like when we start letting them slide and resting on our laurels, we're already in the danger zone. I had an old sponsor who used to say to me, the food is the last thing to go. So if I'm already making excuses to not do these things, I'm already in trouble. And they say it right here. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. Okay? There's no way to go from there but back into the food. That's what they're saying. Once I start letting things slide, I'm sliding down. You're either moving forward or you're moving backward. And when it comes in spiritual axioms, you're either progressing or you're regressing. And if I start letting things go, I'm already regressing. And the only place that will take me is back to the food. So I have to be constantly moving forward. And this is what they're saying. If you try to slack off, it's fine, do it. But the natural way of things is going to carry you back. You can have all of these things and it takes a shit ton of work. But if you do it, you can have it. If you decide it's too much or you've got this already, this is what's going to happen to you. And I am living proof of that. Okay. We are not cured of alcoholism. That means never, ever, ever, ever in my life will I be able to ingest certain substances and react to them normally. And in addition, never, ever, ever, ever in my life will I be able to indulge in resentment, jealousy, judgment, bitterness, self-pity without thinking that I can use food as a solution or to justify bad behavior. Okay. Alcoholism is not just the physical piece. It's the IS me, alcoholism, ISM, I, self, me, that self-obsession. I will slip back into that if I am not constantly teaching and reteaching myself how to be an outward-facing, God-centered person. I will automatically put myself back in the center because that's how we operate. And the truth is, that's how all humans operate. We just have the luxury of falling into an addiction that forces us to live otherwise. But most people do that their whole lives. So even though it doesn't feel that way, we're kind of the lucky ones. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. What we really have is a daily reprieve. Okay. Daily. That means I had yesterday and I have today, but tomorrow is not guaranteed. It depends on how much work I'm willing to put into it. Contingent means dependent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Okay, so we all know about like maintenance goal, maintenance weight, right? We all know that. We all like have PhDs in nutrition. So you get to your goal weight and then you're in maintenance, right? Which you have your food plan that you keep, that, you know, your nutrition or your number of calories, however you do it, I don't really care. But like, now that I'm at my goal weight, these are the things I'm going to do to keep myself at this weight. You know, I'm not going to go back to eating however much I was before. If I want to stay at this weight, if I'm at my goal and I want to be in maintenance, this is what I'm going to do. This is the same thing. We have developed a spiritual experience. We're building our spiritual condition, and these are the things that I need to do every day to maintain it. The difference, however, between maintaining a goal weight and maintaining a spiritual condition is that a goal weight is just, this is what it is, and it stays that way. A spiritual condition, the better I maintain it, the more it grows. It's an evolution. It gets more and more and bigger and bigger and better and better. Whereas, okay, this is my goal weight. Like this is the number on the scale, the end. So either way, we have to maintain it with the same practices every single day. Okay. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. Now, this is in direct contrast to what we talked about in step 3, when we talked about the actor who is constantly trying to arrange life to suit his desires, right? Now that I've done all this work, I am trying to turn myself every day into a sharper and sharper instrument for God's use. So in every way, I have to be trying to carry the vision of God's will into my activities. For example, before I got on this meeting, I have plenty of things I could say about step 10, but it's not about what I think. It's about, God, what do you want me to say about step 10? You know, this morning I was exhausted. All right, God, so I'm really tired, but I have A, B, and C to do today. What do I do? Okay, rest, take this morning easy, and then quietly go into your day. Because if it was up to me, I'd go gangbusters. It's 8 a.m. We got stuff to do. Let's go, let's go. It's not about that. I've had situations where I woke up in meditation. I may have told you guys the story already, but whatever. I don't remember anything. So I woke up one morning in meditation during COVID when everybody was still home. And I got a message that said, you need to drive. I lived in New Jersey at the time. You need to drive to Western Massachusetts to go see your best friend, Alyssa. And I said, what? Like, it's COVID. I'm not going to, went back to meditation. You need to drive to Western Massachusetts today and go see Alyssa. So I said, okay. So I told my husband, okay, I'm going to Western Mass. And he was like, okay. And I got in my car and I drove to see my best friend. And when I get there, she says to me, I can't stop drinking. I need your help. I don't know why. That's not something I came up with on my own. And if it were up to me, I would have stayed in bed because it was COVID and nobody had to go anywhere. But I had to drive 4 hours to Western Massachusetts to go see my friend, and she is still sober today. So I have to bring that vision into all of my activities when I'm dealing with my kids, when I'm dealing with my husband, when I'm dealing with other people. And as most of you know, I don't like most people. The difference, however, though, is that I don't hate people. And if I don't like someone, I don't have to justify it by judging them. I just don't want to hang out with you. That's okay. But I still have to be kind and courteous to them. And be willing to be helpful if they need it and not begrudge them who they are and then withhold my help. That's not what this is about. Okay. So I am God's instrument. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. That is the mantra. Okay. If I don't know what to do, how can I best serve you? Your will, not mine, be done. Because I've spent however many years trying to get my will. And you know what it got me? Membership in a 12-step program. So clearly it was not working for me. Okay. Carol, how are we doing on time? 10 minutes left? Cool. Thank you so much. Okay. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. Okay. So the word constantly is scary, right? Because that means all the time we have to be thinking about this. Just like we work out, like with weights, this is a muscle we're going to strengthen over time. Yeah, it would be nice if I was constantly thinking of others. I'd say I think of others. I'm going to be nice to myself. I'm going to say 60-40. I think of others. Okay. 60% of the time I'm thinking of others. 40% of the time I'm thinking of myself. No, sorry, flip that. 60% of the time I'm thinking of myself. 40% of the time I'm thinking of others. Okay. It's better than the 0% that I was thinking of others, 10, 15 years ago. It's very different. I hope that the more I work, the more I'll be thinking of other people. And maybe one day I'll get to that constantly. But I do know that when I'm feeling agitated or off balance or resentful or any of those, you know, what they talked about, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, when I feel that agitation, I now have directions of what to do and I know what to say. I know what's off. It's because I'm wrapped up in me when I need to ask God what I'm supposed to be doing for him or her or whatever. Okay. We can exercise our willpower along this line, excuse me, all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. I love this sentence because human beings are born with free will. We are willful people. Like there, I mean, our free will is what, you know, got us. We worked hard to to control this disease, and we needed a lot of will in order to do that. And I don't know about you, but I'm a very talented manipulator. So I had a lot of will trying to get other people to do what I wanted to do. So, and that's actually like, that's inherent in human beings. We're not supposed to get rid of our free will or our decision making or our logic or any of those things that make us human. The idea here is that we're supposed to take our will and align it with God's will, and that's how it's used properly. Okay, so our will doesn't go away. We're just putting it in the right direction. It's like you have, like, there was this idea of like, let's say you have somebody like a kid who's really interested in blood. And some people might be like, okay, well, he could be a serial killer. Okay, maybe. Or you teach him to be a surgeon or a butcher or a dentist, you know, like it's not a bad thing that he's interested. You just have to learn how to direct it properly. So just like me, I'm like, you know, I'm a big talker, right? So I have a lot to say. I'm big with words. And I used to use that to cut other people down. I used to insult people and talk, you know, like talk at them and intimidate people. Now I use it to give workshops, and I'm a professional writer. So that's what I use my words for. It's just about directing it properly. So we're supposed to take our will, our cognition, our talents, you know, and ask God how we're supposed to use them. And direction comes. And the more we practice at it, the clearer those directions become. That's what they're saying here. Okay. Okay. Last paragraph on step 10. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power, right? So we said in the beginning that our dilemma was lack of power. So all knowledge and all power do not belong to us. I don't have knowledge and power. I maybe have, like anything that I have, I can't take credit for, because anything that I'm using is a gift to me from a power greater than myself. My existence on this planet, I can't take credit for that. I mean, I'm here because my parents got married and had me. I can't say I exist because I willed myself into existence. It doesn't work like that. There's powers greater than me that are making these things happen. I can't give myself credit for being born with my intellect. I can't give myself credit for, you know, anything, for my muscles working. I was lucky enough to be born with a body with muscles that work. Some people aren't, but any knowledge and power that I have was given to me, and I cannot take credit for it. Just like I can't take credit for any talent that I have. It's just something I got. It's not me. So I need to let go of any credit that I give myself. They call it big shotism in the 12 and 12. Because it has nothing to do with me. This is not about me. It's not about what I'm creating. I have to seek out strength, inspiration, and direction from my higher power. And that when I do that, I get the knowledge and power I need to be an effective human being. Okay. Now, if we have carefully followed directions, the directions they're talking about are the directions they gave for all the steps, we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. Remember, I said we've entered the world of the spirit. We're just beginning the journey now. We've stepped out of the forest and onto the new path, right? We just got onto the yellow brick road, kind of a thing. Okay, so we've begun to sense the flow of the spirit into us. Like we might not even know what's going on, but we're sensing something's happening. To some extent, right? Sometimes a lot, sometimes a little. We've become God conscious. Some people, like I told you about, I had that moment where I was after my 7th step where I was in meditation and I felt God's presence in the room with me. Just for those who are asking, we're on page 85 in the bit. Where I was conscious and palpably felt God's presence. Now, am I in that space all the time? No. but I can't unhave that experience. So now that I've had that experience, I'm aware. But some people, you know, they say that they have the spiritual experience of the educational variety. The point is we're starting that process and it can only grow the more we feed it. Okay. We have begun again to develop this vital sixth sense. And I love the expression sixth sense because it refers to a capability that's beyond the physical, right? Because we have our five senses, which everybody knows about. The sixth sense is an ability to interpret and engage in a way that's beyond physical law. So we're starting to get this idea and notice things around us, the synchronicity, the messages, you happen to run into this person when you needed, you know, like these small things that we start paying attention to and coming up. But we must go further, and that means more action. And that is going to lead us into step 11 for next month. So I'm just going to look quickly in the 12 and 12 and see if there was anything else I thought was really important. All right. So in the 12 and 12, they talk about spot inventory because they talk about it in step 10, right? We continue to take personal inventory. So there are three kinds of inventory. Number one, are we out of time? 5 minutes? 2 minutes? Three. Sounds like, okay, fine. So perfect. That's actually perfect. Okay, three kinds of inventory, and then I'm going to stop. Okay, the first is the spot check inventory. This is when the emotions are high and you're in it and you're, you know, in a resentment or a fear, and there's a risk of your choices being immediately affected by that. A spot check inventory is when you call someone and you say, this is what's happening. And you do the things that we just talked about in the big book, where we ask God to remove them, discuss them with someone, make amends, and turn our thoughts to someone you can help. That's a spot check inventory. Okay. Then there's the nightly inventory, which we're going to talk about in step 11, which is all the questions that you answer every night. And then there's the fourth step that people are encouraged, like a house cleaning. Some people do it once a year. Some people do it twice a year. Some people do it every other year, like sort of rebooting the fourth step, because we accumulate stuff over time. That's just how it goes. So those are the three kinds of inventory that they're talking about in step 10. And through that process, through that continuous personal inventory, we start to really start building up our spiritual condition and seeing the 10-step promises come true in our lives. So yeah, I'm going to stop there.